Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Rider's Ramblings. Today I'm in Belize, just about to join what we call the Caravan Cease, the A86, to go towards Plaisir. So I shall be going past Versailles, but nowhere actually interesting, unfortunately. Just on the, you could call it the ring road, which the Caravan Cease is. It's one of the ring roads in Paris, or around Paris should I say. You have the Marichaux, then you have the Périphérique, then you have the Caravan Cease, and then you have the Francilian. So there are four. Anyhow, today what I wanted to talk to you about was tyres. I was watching Stuart Fullingham. If you don't watch his channel, it's very interesting. He discusses mainly British motorcycles and Triumphs, that type of thing. And okay, then I believe he also discusses Lee and Enfield. But the Enfield motorcycles, I don't think they call them Lee and Enfield anymore, do they? Those are rifles. The Enfield motorcycles as well. Anyhow, he was talking about tyres on his video which he released this morning. And it was very, very interesting, and I thought I would just pick up on a couple of things that he says. And of course the first one is that a lot of people are running with their tyres incorrectly inflated, and they're wondering why they're not getting the correct mileage out of their tyres or whatever. And one point struck me on that is that I believe the British insurers are changing their insurance system so that your car or your vehicle has to be in a roadworthy condition. Otherwise they're not going to pay out, or they won't pay any excesses or whatever. So it has to be in a fully roadworthy condition. Now, to me, a fully roadworthy condition will also include your tyres being inflated to the manufacturer's recommendations. Whether you actually run your tyres to the manufacturer's recommendations or harder, which some people tend to do, is a moot point. But if it's not set exactly, I would have thought that the insurance companies have a cop-out, a get-out-of-jail card free if you work. So I would suggest that if you don't check your tyres regularly, that you do. A gentleman there with a Barry Sheen helmet, which is something I haven't seen for a long time. I do think it's very sad that Barry died at the age he did, but yes, never mind. Anyhow, so back to tyres and so on. It's a very contentious subject, which tyres, which brand, how should you inflate them and this type of thing. And you've got people saying they should be overinflated and underinflated and so on. But, I mean, one of the reasons that the manufacturers set the pressures that they do, the recommended tyre pressures, is because it's a very good balance between comfort, ride, safety, and that type of thing for the tyre. So if you can try this, but do it on a private road and don't crash it. If you actually overinflate your tyres by only 1 or 2 psi and go out for a test ride on a private road, and just see the difference that 1 or 2 psi overinflated actually makes to your tyres. What you'll actually feel is the ride is different. It's much harder. So in theory, it actually gives you slightly better grip, and slightly better longevity if you overinflate your tyre, but it's not the manufacturer's recommendation, so your insurance company has an out there, and the ride is a little bit harder. So how do you make sure that your tyres are the correct pressure? Because as soon as you disconnect the hose that you use to inflate your tyre, or the tester that you use to inflate your tyre, you're going to lose a little bit of pressure. And that is a problem, because how much of a difference will the insurance companies allow? Because you will notice with just 1 psi over the recommended that the ride is different. It's actually much harder. You'll feel it when you hit the bumps. So really you need to take into account that when you inflate your tyre, you have to take into account the loss that you're going to sustain by removing the hose. Now, this is probably very OCD on my part, but knowing the British insurance companies as I do, having had a motorcycle stolen and that type of thing in the UK, I would be very wary about not having the tyre inflated exactly, and I do mean exactly to the limit, because even just 1 psi on some tyres is noticeable. On the ride, you do get a slightly different ride. So what do I do? I mean, that's probably what some people want to know. Well, I actually have a battery-operated tyre pump, and it actually fits on the bike, and it's a lithium battery, and it will inflate the tyre, don't ask me how I know this, 3 times on a single charge. I've actually picked up a puncture which I plugged, but it wasn't very successful, the plugging, so I had to re-inflate the tyre on my way to the garage to get it replaced and so on. So I do know for a fact that this thing will actually inflate a tyre 3 times, and on the FJR it actually fits in the recess by the brake light. It's very good. You could actually use a small bungee, a very short bungee, and sort of clip it in there, and I've used some bubble wrap and things like that to go round it. I'll see if I can get you a picture of it later. On this bike here, of course, that space is actually slightly smaller and it won't fit, so I actually put it into the saddlebag, and it lives in the saddlebag. So I actually have 2. I have 1 for each bike, and I thoroughly recommend it. I'll put a link in the description below, in the notes below for you, so you can see it. But I found them to be very accurate, or the ones that I have been very accurate. I've tested them against a number of different tyre gauges, and they are accurate, so I'm quite happy with that. And what it allows me to do is sort of put as much as half a psi extra into the tyre when I'm inflating it. And of course, when you take the hose off, you lose probably that half psi, so I'm probably running it bang on the correct pressure on the front and rear. Now, most very modern motorcycles, I'm not going to say all because it doesn't actually apply to all, tend to run with standard tyre pressures of 36 front and 42 on the rear. But please check your manual, because they can be different, and it literally just depends on when the motorcycle was designed and which company, which brand of motorcycle it is. I know that some Kawasaki's, for example, run different pressures, whereas Honda and Yamaha, the ones that I've seen anyhow, and I'm not going to say I've seen all of them, but the ones that I've seen tend to run 36 front and 42 on the rear. But please check. But what it does allow you is it allows you to check your tyre pressures, the pump, anytime you like. Now, always do it when the tyres are cold, and the season does affect the amount of pressure in the tyre. So if you have a very cold day, say 0 degrees or freezing point, shall we say, for our American cousins, which is 32, and you check your tyres on that day and add a bit of air, and say that the next day it's somewhat warmer, say 15 degrees, which I have noticed can happen in France. You can have one day which is very cold, followed by a day which is very hot, especially in the spring. You'll actually notice that your tyres are overinflated if you check them the following day, simply because the change in air temperature in general has changed the pressure in the tyre. So you have to be quite on top of this, and especially, sort of springtime and autumn time, when you can get large fluctuations. I've seen as much during the day, as much as 15 degrees in one day change in Paris. So you might have to check what it is in the morning and then check it again in the afternoon, because I have seen 0, 1, 2 degrees in the morning, that's centigrade, and then I've seen 15, 16 degrees. I think the most I saw was 18 degrees in the afternoon. And that's one of those really nasty speed cameras that if you're even just 1 kilometre, half a mile an hour over the limit, it's going to flash you, which is not good. So, bearing in mind the propensity of the British insurance companies to try and weasel out of paying anything and that type of thing, I would make sure that you check your tyres regularly, that you have an accurate gauge, and you can actually get your gauges tested. If you've bought a gauge, you can actually get it tested. I don't know if they can calibrate it, but I know you can certainly get them tested. If you are on a track day ever, and they have a tyre company there, then quite often they will actually have a system of calibrating your gauge, or telling you how much your gauge is actually out from exact. Track days are very good because you actually run your tyres at a much lower pressure because you're putting much more heat into the tyre. So don't run road pressures when you're doing a track day. You need to go and talk to the tyre manufacturer's rep or whoever is there, because they are there quite frequently, and see what what you should run them at, and so on. So, yeah. This is a real mess today, isn't it? I wonder where you're going, Toyota. Do you know? I don't think you do. Never mind. I'm in the wrong lane. I should have gone down the middle. Never mind. I'm early. I'm about 15 minutes early, so I can have a nice cup of coffee before I start. So, anyhow, getting back to tyres and tyre pressures, you need to be on top of your game for tyre pressures from now on. I think it's a case of, now that the insurance companies are trying to find any reason not to pay out, then that's clever. There's diesel all over the road there. Now that's what we do call a clever. And when it rains on this roundabout, it is terrible. It really is a skating rink, that roundabout. A couple of times I've had some interesting moments. So, anyhow, check your tyre pressures regularly with an accurate gauge and make sure they're set to the manufacturer's recommendation in the manual. Not what it says is the maximum pressure on the sidewall of the tyre or anything like that, but what it says in your manual. And maybe at some point you will thank me, because A, the bike will handle usually much better, especially in the wet, because the sipes and the tread will be more open, so therefore clearing more water off the road for you. The ride will be about normal though, and your tyre life will probably be the maximum you can get, although I do admit that if you actually overinflate your tyres slightly, you will get a bit more life out of them, but that is probably not something you want to do with the English insurance companies. Okay, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.